Welcome, investigator. Evil is on the rise. Crime is escalating. Our mission is to eliminate the crime by exposing evil, examine why it manifests, and highlight the brave souls that confront it every day. Join us as we work together to bring justice to every victim. Welcome to All Things Crime. Here's your host, Jared Bradley.
Hey everybody, it's Jared. Welcome to another episode of All Things Crime. Appreciate you being here. If you haven't subscribed yet, now's your chance. Hit that subscribe button and the bell so that you never miss an episode. I have a awesome guest on today. I met Taylor here, Taylor Kramer. He's out of Texas and at the south end of Texas, and I'll have him describe that. But one of the things that I was on X, formerly Twitter, and saw some posts on there, and he was describing some of the chaos that is down at the border. And there's some specific things that he has research on and exposing some gangs and things down there. And I want Taylor to come on here and describe that to you. But I you know what? Today is, what is the date? 17th of January. And by the time you're hearing this, it's probably a day or two after the new President Trump and his administration are coming in. And I just think we're going to see a lot of chaos, folks. I hope you're ready because there's a lot of people here that, as we've described numerous times on this show, between my trip down to Panama and seeing the Darien Gap, talking with Michael Yon and others about the border, and the times that I've been to the border myself, but I don't have near as much experience as I know Taylor does down there, especially if you're only, what'd you say, Taylor, 60 miles north of Brownsville? Man, you're right down there in the thick of it. So.
Yep.
Yeah. So welcome to the show, Taylor. Appreciate you coming on, buddy.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
My pleasure, because I think this is super important. All Things Crime is all about not only what is happening as far as crime goes, but also how to solve it. I mean, we like coming up with solutions to the various problems that we see. And, a lot of, I don't know how many episodes you've been able to hear of All Things Crime, but once we identify a problem, that just identifying the problem doesn't really help. We need to come up with solutions. And part of that solution, I think, is just really getting information out there and preparing folks for what is coming down the pike here, because the entitlement mentality, which I think is just a cancer that goes through all of society, not just the United States, but all over the world. And that entitlement mentality is just infested into a lot of these illegal migrants that are here, because they believe they've been told all the way down to wherever their origination is, whether it be Haiti or the Congo or China, it doesn't matter. They've been told that they all they have to do is get to the U.S. and the United States will take care of them for the rest of their lives. Well, that's all fixing to change here, and as soon as it does, I think that entitlement mentality is going to come out really strong, and these people they're. Well, let me just ask you, Taylor, what do you think is going to happen?
Well, I think you're absolutely right about the entitlement theory. Because, I was just talking on another podcast to Greg Bolden. He came up with a really good point that all these people, Lupe, all these migrant worker rights places, they want rights for a group, but that's not how we do it in America. We have rights for the individual. But basically, they just want to use their mass as a group to leverage. I mean, what we've seen in the last 4 years, we're going to see that just with, it being the topic of immigration, and it might even get much more wilder than that.
Yeah, it's well, I'll just tell you this little story. So went down to Panama and met up with Chuck Holton and Michael Yon down there. And we took two congressmen. One is my congressman here in Utah, Burgess Owens, and the other one is Tom Tiffany out of Wisconsin. Both incredible men. And we went down there because they had seen what was happening in the border just shortly after President Biden had taken over, and basically just threw the gates open and started inviting people. Well, he was inviting immigration. I mean, just as he was campaigning, he was inviting them and prepping them. So they were there just in mass, ready to come. And then as soon as he became president, signed those executive orders, and lo and behold, here they come. From that moment forward, people started trying to get the word out, saying, "Hey, this is going to be a problem. It's a problem now, and it's only going to get worse." And so these guys that I took down to these congressmen and a few others that went down with us to Panama, went up the rivers, and about 3-hour boat ride up to that small community, Baja Chiquito. Have you ever been there?
Yes, I have.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. Well, you know exactly what I'm talking about then. This is probably in the end of May 2021. And so right at the very beginning of when it was happening. And even then there were probably 300 to 400 migrants a day coming through the gap into that little village. And, even then they were overwhelmed. And they say now it's thousands per day. So not sure when was the last time you were down there?
It was December into the new year, so 2022 into 2023. When I was down there, there was heavy rainfall, so we didn't see the influx that you usually do. But you could absolutely see the destruction that has been caused in these Embra villages, because what the United Nations does, for the viewers out there, there's already a village established. There's already some clear-cut area of the jungle. So the United Nations is like, hey, we'll set up here. So basically, they set up their camps right next to the villages, which completely destroys the Embra culture. I mean, it changes everything down there. There's trash in the water and everything. It's terrible.
Yeah. Some of the living conditions down there, especially for the natives, the Embra people, the Indians down there, it's just disgusting. And I mean, they had a tough enough life, and then all of a sudden you have all these thousands and literally thousands of migrants a day are coming through this place. And when we were there, again, it was just kind of the very beginning of the influx, and but they were still, these Embra Indians, they didn't have anything. They had no running water, they had no electricity, they were barely able to feed their own families, and yet a lot of these migrants were coming out of the jungle and demanding better housing accommodations, more food. They're demanding of these people, and to me, it was just, I could not believe the entitlement that they had. That where they honestly were saying, you need to take better care of me. You need to give me more of your stuff. And from that moment, it was such an eye-opening moment for me. And the moment that I saw that, I was like, I can't, when these people see what Americans have, just the average, even a poor American that has a home, a lot of them have 2 cars, cell phones, grocery stores that are full. The moment they see that, they are going to demand everything. And what a surprise. That's exactly what's happened.
Oh, 100%. And it's the audacity of illegal aliens coming here illegally. We're not even talking about the CBP one. That's still illegal. Let's say someone who crossed the border, is trying to be undetected, is now joining up with groups and holding signs saying, we deserve this, that, and the other. And it's like, you didn't get that in your home country, did you? Why do you expect it here? Because they've been told by the United Nations. They've been, the streets are paved with gold. We've heard that one before.
Yeah. So yeah, so talk about these the open border types that you were referring to when right before we came on live here.
So what I've been tracking mostly is Lupe, because so they're La Unión de Pueblo Entero, and they started in 2003 down here in the RGV, and their big thing was to improve colonias, which colonias are traditionally Mexican and Mexican American little settlements on the border that are usually illegal settlements out somewhere in the county. They don't have running water, lights, anything like that. So that's where they started, but they're funded they're funded by Soros. At one point, Cesar Chavez started this and it had a different purpose. But at some point the Soros money came in and they became just a political directive. And what's really sad is you have all these extremely vulnerable people in the United States. If you're an illegal alien, you're extremely vulnerable to, gang extortion, all types of stuff, deportation, and they know that. And so they're saying, hey, if you want to stay here, we already know you're scared. We're going to scare you even more, tell you that Donald Trump's, foaming at the mouth to deport you. So if you don't hold a sign for us, if you don't join our cause, that's it for you. So it's really sick. If they really cared about these people, they wouldn't be scaring them like that. They wouldn't be pushing that kind of propaganda. But everybody's in cahoots. This is not just one group acting alone. We know this. This is a globalist push. And you've got Catholic Charities of the Rio Grande Valley, Chuy Hinojosa, a local Texas politician, the county judge. Everybody is lockstep in this plan. As soon as the people started coming in, actually months before, the county judge down here, and Chuy Hinojosa, who's state government, he's a Texas state senator. They all had Norma Pimentel, the judge, and Chuy all had a lunch. And what they were discussing at that lunch, people say, is, where are we going to put all these people once they start coming across the border? And the moment they started coming across the border, the moment that Biden got in, they're going right to Catholic Charities. They were getting praise from the county government. I mean, it was very obvious what was going on.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's it's hard to fathom, and I just don't think that most Americans, especially, but even people around the world, it's hard to understand that this isn't like organic, where people are just like kind of just saying, hey, I just want a better life, and I'm gonna try to migrate someplace else. This is a coordinated effort where you have organizations that don't believe in borders, period. They don't believe in national sovereignty, where they think that we're global citizens. So anybody from anywhere can go into any country, and they should be able to, I don't know, just go and live wherever they want to live. And it kind of defies all logic of how humanity has ever existed. And to me, it's like this weird mentality that they, again, go back to the entitlement, and they literally believe, folks, you got to understand this. These people believe that what you have worked your whole life for, you don't own. It just belongs to whoever wants it. And so, your home, your bank account, your food, it belongs to everybody. And so if somebody doesn't have as much as you have, they're entitled to come into your home and take what they want. And imagine, not being able. I mean, it's kind of the equivalent to me of the mayor coming to your home and basically saying, you need to take the locks off your house, and people are just going to come in and take what they want, and you don't have any say about it. That's kind of the, I don't know. To me, Taylor, am I on track here?
You're on track. And I mean, just look at England. Maybe they will say, hey, it's illegal to have locks, or it's racist to have locks in your house because you don't want people from the street coming in. I mean, you never know when the gaslighting will never end. You give a commie a cookie, it's all over. I mean, you could not give these people an inch, because what they're trying to do, they're trying to play on your, on your sympathy. We are all, good people, and we want to help people. But, when they're basically giving you the puppy dog eyes 24/7, saying, oh, we need help. Look, I've spent months in the camps. I've slept in the camps. I have many friends that are illegal aliens that that I've met in the camps, acquaintances. And just to get interviews and hang out with these people. I would buy lunch and everything else. And it gets to the point where even me just trying to, on a very shoestring budget, trying to get interviews and get in with people, I was going broke. So I think any leftist who wants to bring in mass amounts of people, go spend a couple weeks feeding people down in the camps and see where you are at, with your account. It's very, you can see very easily it's unsustainable for anybody. And what they're trying to do is basically completely get rid of, the Constitution, everything we hold dear. Christian values are big time in the way of Marxists too. And we just have to remind people, this is just Marxism. You call it woke, you call it whatever you want. It's Marxism. It's against nature. It's supposed to be against nature. You can go into the whole, Freud two-gender principle versus the Rousseau-Marx 72 gender principle, which, the 72 gender thing, it's not new. They just started talking about it recently. So this has been around for a very long time. It's never worked. And all Marxism does is destroy. It's a vehicle to bring in socialism and communism. Hey, your system's so broken from the Marxists, now the state has to take over and do everything for you.
Yeah. And yeah, you would think that over so many times that they've tried this and it's always failed. And the Soviet Union, I think, is the biggest example of the failure on a mass scale, because it works. And here's the pattern. Basically, once a communist government takes over, initially it's all well and great because they're kind of they're piggybacking off of kind of a capitalistic type of environment where people were actually productive. But over time, those resources start getting more and more scarce, primarily because people stop being productive. And that's the thing is, if people don't have freedom, then there's no incentive to be more productive than others. So if my efforts, my personal efforts in working in my business or my job, or even in developing, keeping my yard nice, if there's no incentive for me to do that, and everybody around me is just sitting back and watching me work hard, the little red hen that was the little fable that we grew up with, as kids, where, the little red hen asked everybody if they would go and help and, harvest the wheat and then, make the flour and then bake the bread. Nobody wanted to help. But then all of a sudden, when the bread is baked and everybody smells it and they're like, "Ooh, that smells really good." Everybody wants the bread, but nobody wants to work in order to get the bread. It's the exact same thing. If I'm working hard to keep my yard clean and working hard at my job to make more money so that I can have nicer things, but nobody else is working hard, and yet they know at the very end they will be able to profit from my labor, then eventually I'm going to stop working hard, because I'm going to say, you know what, I'm not going to work hard and then not be able to actually benefit from all of my hard work. And it's human nature, folks. And I guarantee every single person, even the ones that are these hardcore communists, they actually believe that they should be able to maintain their own labor and their own benefits, but they should be able to disperse everybody else's efforts. And to me, it's just evil. And I don't know how else to describe it. It's like, why do you think you are entitled to my labor? That's slavery. And yet that's the way they think. It's crazy.
Yeah, and the modern leftists, not the general. I don't like to generalize too much, but we'll generalize the modern leftists. The blue hair, whatever you want to call them. Wait till they find out if there is a communist revolution. Wait till they find out that they're going to be working on a farm, 12 hours a day plus. That's what these peasant revolution, all that stuff is about. It is basically you go work for wherever the state needs you, and it's usually going to be menial labor. And all these people with all their degrees, they wouldn't know what to do. They would not know what to do. I don't think they've grown a single thing in their life. How self-sustainable are they? Because they want everything from the state in a very simple way. I talk to people around town. There's a lot of, there's a college not far from here, so you get a lot of that kind of leftist thought. And I just say very plainly, So you want the government to have all the power and you to have none. That's what you want, communism. And that kind of starts to get the wheels turning and go, okay, so you like this government, but what about the next 4 years? You don't want that government, do you? Do you want the government to be the only one to have guns? Start thinking about those things, that absolutism, that totality of you are a ward of the state and they know what's better for you than you do. I mean, it's the worst thing.
Well, how do they respond to that?
They're usually pretty quiet. But the biggest thing with a lot of these leftists is they have developed a narcissistic personality disorder. Sometimes they're born with that, but I think the way social media, selfies, all this stuff, all this technology has really driven people to be narcissistic and rewards them for being narcissistic. If you look at some of the biggest social media accounts, there are people that just either make a fool of themselves, they're a clown, for social media, or they do really mean things, or it's not about helping people. That's not what gets you a million views. Being a good guy doesn't do that. So we're just seeing,
Yeah.
we're getting hit from all sides. This is everything all at once. They're destroying our culture. They're bringing in, Marxism. And again, we've dealt with this in the 70s. We've dealt with this, many times before. But now, like we've said before, they have millions, and people are saying 10 plus, 20 plus. I mean, really, it's got to be all illegal aliens combined in the United States has to be what, 50 plus million. I mean, we can't trust the
Yeah, it's a
DHS
lot.
numbers.
No, not even close. I don't believe for a second that, what do they say, 10.8 million over the last 4 years?
Something like
I'm
10
like,
to 12, something like that. Yeah.
I'll bet it's close to double that. And even if it's only 50% higher than that, that's still 15 million people. And that's just new. That's just the people that have come over in the last 4 years. But I think all the people that have come here illegally prior to that, the thing really, Taylor, that scares me the most are the type of people that I think have come over, especially in the last year or two, because again, when we were down in Panama, again, this is in May of 2021, so at the very beginning of this, when we were there, and we were in Baja Chiquito, I don't know, 4 or 5 hours, maybe, probably not even that, probably 3 to 4 hours. So we're sitting there, 2 Cubans, and these guys were 100% military, because they first of all, these 2 young men, they were fit, but they just looked, I spent 14 years in the military. I know what a military guy looks like. And Chuck Holton was a Army Ranger, Michael Yon, Special Forces, and we had a Marine with us. Every single one of us looked at these 2 guys and we go, those 2 are 100% military. They had military backpacks, just the way they carried themselves. Well, and that was just while we were sitting there. Those 2 guys came across. We ran into some Egyptians. They looked pretty fit. They said the average took them, 2 to 3 weeks to get through the Darien Gap, and a lot of them were coming to, they were just exhausted. Some had trench foot or gangrene. A lot of them were just in horrible shape. But these 2 guys, they said they made it in like 7-8 days. These guys were humping. They were moving fast, and you can't do that if you're not in really good shape, and you have food and you're able to protect yourself. These guys were military. Well, that was in 2021. Imagine, well, I'm sure what you saw out of all those migrants, how many of them, maybe they weren't actually, part of a military, but they were young fighting age males. And literally we have, I bet you there's an army. If you think of all the different people from all over the world that have come here that are young fighting age males, including gang members and everything else, there has to be close to 10 million of them in the country. That's larger than our entire military.
No, absolutely. And when I was down in Baja Chiquito, what we were looking at is people who said they were Venezuelan but were actually Arabic. Now, there is a big cross section of people from the Middle East that live in Venezuela. I'm sure Michael Yon can elaborate on this way better than I can. He's been tracking this for a long time. But basically, they kind of look, similar. They have the same tattoos. You ask them, what their football team is, they'll say the Venezuelan football team. And what they're saying is there's a lot of offshoots of Hezbollah and other jihadist groups coming through. And there definitely is. We've got Chinese spies for sure. I mean, we've seen it all. And anytime you've been on the other side of the border or even in the United States and you take out a camera where there's, a bunch of illegal aliens sitting around, you don't always get a good response. Last time I was down in the camps in Matamoros, I haven't been too often because it just hasn't been very friendly. Years prior, it's been okay because everybody had, the hopes of, hey, CBP1, we got years to get here. Now, nobody wants to talk down there, and the people that are showing up are not nice guys. Basically, there were some guys that were trying to chase me out of camp last time, just for taking photos. I'm going, no, I'm the guy who's always down here. I give food to everybody. We cook out. It's a good time. They're like, we don't care. You need to leave. So, yeah, we're definitely getting who's coming through now. You still have your CBP1 people, but I mean, they have to know that the jig is up very soon. So you're going to see, for anybody who didn't get in that really wants to get in undetected, that's who's coming in now. You're getting a lot more, nefarious characters. And I mean, every gang in the world, every bad thing that happens anywhere in the world is happening in the United States right now. That's just a rule of thumb to go by. So just be prepared and watch out. And yeah, TDA, Tren de Aragua, is, I mean, you saw how quickly they just took over apartment complexes, everything else. That's what they're known for doing. They're big into sex trafficking, and also they're really good at penetrating borders and setting up metastructures in other countries. That's what they did all the way from Venezuela in South and Central American countries, all the way up to the United States. And that's what they're doing. If you look at the corridor, they're coming right from Venezuela, right up through Eagle Pass, and then they keep going north. What's right up there? Colorado, all the way up through the Midwest. That is their area that they're taking down. And if we try to do mass deportations of these violent groups, you bet they're going to dig in like a tick, and it's going to get messy. And any mess that happens, it's going to be blamed on the Trump administration. We've seen it before. We know the media is going to do nothing but gaslight. I see this next 4 years having a very kind of South Africa vibe of, oh no, you're not being hurt, you're not being attacked, don't worry about it, these people have nothing. I mean, they could come in and do a home invasion, and the media would still be gaslighting, going, no, it's really not that bad that they broke into your house. So that's what I see.
Yeah, I think you're right. And the sad thing is, even though all of these groups, and it doesn't matter, where they come from, all these groups of people, the one thing that's going to unite them is their entitlement and their belief that they have a right to be here. And that's kind of why I was prefacing the whole thing, is because I think they're splintered now, but as soon as we actually start deporting them, they are going to be united in the number one purpose is to stay. They're going to stay at all costs. And I think when they realize that the only way that I think in their minds they're going to be able to stay is if they become violent. And I think that literally is what is going to happen over the next 4 years. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. And to that point, Americans have been backed into a corner and gaslit so much that if they defend themselves, they think that they're doing wrong. You know what I mean? If they defend themselves in public, they know they're going to jail. The people in these other countries fight every day. They fight for food. They fight for everything. They're not afraid to fight. And a lot of Americans are. A lot of Americans have been backed into that corner. So, I mean, we're just psychologically, we're seeing it from every level. And I think it's time for people to just say, you know what, we've had enough of this kids' playtime. To quote Gab McGinnis, Trump represents dad coming home and saying, okay, kids, it's bedtime. No more staying up all night eating cookies and stuff. That's what the last 4 years has been. Spread the government money around. None of it really matters. We'll just make we'll raise inflation. They're basically having a house party. Trump comes back. All that stuff is over. All those grants are over. And basically what they're doing, what the leftists are doing, is throwing a tantrum. They don't want to go to bed. But what they're controlling is people that have fought their whole lives, people that have, like you said, military experience. And it's going to be interesting. The nefarious people are definitely already organizing themselves. When I was out on the California border a few months ago, April Sparks, who's on Twitter, you can check out her account. She found a cell phone that was unlocked from a Syrian man, and I believe from the translations that they had, what they got, a guy they call teacher. Okay, teacher, what do I do now? He was in Turkey, giving them directions, going, "You're going to meet up with this guy. This guy speaks Spanish and Arabic. He's going to translate for you. Just get to San Diego as soon as possible." I ran that by some high-speed friends of mine that said, "Dude, that is 100% a sell." You know what I mean? They can't say exactly what they're going to be doing, but there was the biggest thing is when people cross the border and they're just, your everyday average worker that's coming across, they're going to get on with their mom, with their family, going, "Oh, mom, I made it across." There was nothing in there about, "Hi, mom, I made it." This was very business-like. This was, you could tell it was like a military operation. So, and that's just one cell phone found once, 1 year on the border. I mean, we just don't know. We have no idea how many cells are in the country, when they're going to be activated, what they're really here to do. There's going to be terrorist cells, there's going to be all that stuff, but the thing that we really need to look at is the long term. We're going to have spies in here for decades. We're going to have all types of problems like that. So this is and the big thing is too, just like Chewy Hinojosa, his mother was an illegal alien. Chewy Hinojosa was born in the United States. And now he's in Texas politics telling people you got to keep the border open and greasing the wheels to do so. So how many pregnant women have come in? How many anchor babies are there going to be? How many are going to get involved in politics, civics and everything else? And where is our country going to be morally, socially, and everything else in 20 years? Because even if you say everybody you brought in were angels, millions of people, and they're all just perfect people, they don't know the Constitution and they're not used to fighting for their rights. And so they're going to side with the state every time against the people that want to have rights.
Yeah, it's hard not to just get depressed, man. It's hard not to just say, the problem is just so big. And honestly, I think this is part of like George Soros and his ilk. I think this is part of what their plan is just, it's Alinsky 101, just overwhelm the system. And so I think a lot of politicians, frankly, are cowards. And, once they actually get into power, the one thing that they care about is staying in power. And part of that, by staying in power is not making waves and just kind of going along with the flow. Well, this flow is, you know what? I think they believe if they're the on the bow of the, or not the bow, but the stern, I guess. What's the back of a ship?
The bow.
Anyway.
Oh my God. Why can't I remember? James O'Keefe's is going to be mad. I gotta say.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if they're on the very,
it's a little early
if the ship's going, us landlocked people, army guys, we don't know what the thing is called.
We got 100 people yelling at the screen right now. Yeah.
Yeah. They're like all the Navy guys that are listening right now, they're just screaming at us. But
right,
whoever it is, these guys believe that as long as they're the last ones, as the ship's going down, as the Titanic is sinking, if they're on the very back of the ship and they're the last ones into the water, then that's okay. That's a win for them. But what they don't realize is the whole ship is going down, and eventually you're going to be in the water right next to everybody else. And that's, I actually did a series a number of years ago when I first started the podcast. I called it Evil, the Beast, and the Buffet. And the analogy is evil kind of allows the beast to grow, and the beast eventually gets into the buffet, and basically we are the buffet. And a lot of these politicians believe that just because they're at the end of the buffet and they're the last ones to be eaten, that they're safe, and they're not. And eventually the whole system will collapse. And then I know this is, for a lot of people, this may just sound like conspiracy theories, and it may just sound like, the United States, because we haven't had a war here since the 1860s, that so many people, it's just incomprehensible that we could actually have that kind of a chaos here in the United States. It's just hard for them to comprehend. And I understand that. The United States is the greatest social experiment that has ever happened in the history of mankind. And because of that, because of how amazing this country is, and our founding fathers and the Constitution and the representative republic that we have, all of that has contributed to being an absolute amazing place to live over the last 150 years, basically. And we've had peace and prosperity that no other people in the entire world, in the history of the world, has ever been able to experience. And so for many of our citizens and many people that have lived and are living here in the United States, we just can't comprehend of what we're looking at. And yet literally we've become a powder keg, and the only thing that hasn't happened is somebody's lit the spark. And you tell me, Taylor, I think President Trump coming into office in 2 days is literally 3 days, is literally going to be the spark. And I think the potential for chaos is just absolutely off the charts. I don't think we've ever seen anything even remotely close to this.
How many assassinations have we seen on a on a presidential candidate in the last, well, I guess you go back too far, there actually has been a few. But what I'm getting at is, yes, we've already had, assassination attempts. It's been crazier than ever before, and yes, it's going to be a pretty interesting 4 years. But we have to remember, I don't think you can ever completely clean out the deep state and the bureaucracy. It's just there's just too much of it. But you can make these basically these fail safes and make certain laws and executive orders to kind of prevent that. But the number one thing that needs to happen if you ever want change, doesn't matter who's president, doesn't matter any of that, you have to change the university system. Everybody who goes to the university, even if they're conservative, comes out at least a little bit Marxist. Most of the people that I know that go into the university system never seem to leave. They're still taking classes 28, 30 years old. And then they get a job as an educator, and they never leave this bubble that has been just purely a Marxist, think tank. And it's to the point where they don't even make their own curriculum anymore. The colleges don't make their own curriculum. They ask the students to make the curriculum. They pick the one they like the most, and then that becomes the new curriculum for, to teach them. And it's not based on anything. There's no checks and balances. And if you want somebody hired for a company that knows how to, code, who knows how to do this and that or edit, they had to go to college, right? You're looking at college, college experience on the resume. They're going to have Marxism in them. And you're going to see things like what happened to James O'Keefe. His whole company was taken from him because a bunch of people said, well, you get to do all the fun stuff and we want all the money, but he's the guy who made all the money. He's the one who baked the bread. If we don't change that, nothing will change.
Yeah, well, I think one of the biggest problems with our education system, I think you're spot on there, but just people in general, we need to understand that talking is not productivity. And it's interesting between social media and, influencers and the media, the mainstream media, all they do is talk. And yet a lot of them are paid millions of dollars a year to do that. But that's not actually being productive. Being productive means that you are actually taking something like guys on an assembly line, creating a car. You're actually creating something. You're moving one object in a way and changing it to a way to make it more valuable. Well, granted, we're in the information age, and I understand that information is valuable, but you also have to have the basic necessities. Actually building a building. The guys that go in and actually build something, that is productivity. And you can't have a society that's just based on information. Like it or not, we have to eat, we have to live somewhere. We have to drive roads. We have to actually move places. There's still a physical aspect of people that no matter what we do, no matter how smart we think we are, those things still have to happen. And that's what I was talking about back, when we first got started here. People don't understand what it actually means to be productive anymore. And a lot of that is from the university system. They reward people for getting these degrees that are completely worthless. And then these people come out into the real world. They get out of the university system and they just can't comprehend that somebody won't pay them $200,000 a year for, basically having a underwater basket weaving type of a degree, or, anyway, some of these degrees that people are coming out with are completely
Gender studies, yeah, all the equity
yeah,
studies,
gender
that kind of
studies.
stuff.
It's like,
A lot of them are actually choosing their own degree and making up it as they go along. And the college is like, sure, you paid us, we'll sign that paper. So yeah, it's a joke.
yeah. And yet they're coming out hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. And then they can't find a job that pays them more than 30 or 40,000 a year. And they realize, oh, you know what? People aren't just going to give me money anymore. And it's sad just watching this mentality, and a lot of these people that are like, oh yeah, we need the federal government to bail us out and pay off our student loans. Say, well, no, you don't. You signed your name on the line, you pay it back. And to me, it's like, how do we it's frustrating, it's sad. And I just look at this. Okay, so here's the problem. We now have an entire crop, an entire generation of completely illiterate and just idiots coming out of the university system right now. What do we do in order to fix that?
I think it's one of those things where you just have to be slapped in the face by reality. Everybody has their moment where they just kind of wake up, if they do wake up. You talk to some of the former Soviet Union defectors, they say that once a human being is completely demoralized, there's no taking them back. So hopefully, and here's the thing we need to remember: these are our countrymen, our fellow countrymen. We can't give them sympathy in the way, oh, okay, you can do this and that, because it's giving a mouse a cookie. You give them an inch, they'll take a mile. That's how these Marxists work, to the point where they're so narcissistic and they're so self-centered that whatever they say is the truth, and everybody else, that's just is BS. So there has to be, at some point, we have to give some of these people a chance. There's some that I think need to be exiled or taken out of the United States altogether for treason. But yeah, we have to find some way. We can't just say screw all you kids that are woke and everything else. We also, what we have to do is we have to realize that it wasn't these kids that brainwashed themselves. It was the generation before that became professors. I think everybody needs to take a personal responsibility as a parent to really get involved in what their kids doing, what they're watching. What are they really watching on the tablet? What's next on the YouTube playlist? What are they being told? And not everybody is going to be able to pick up on the Marxist slang, on those kind of things. They're just too busy, or they don't have the ear for it. So I think family dinners need to come back. The nuclear family needs to be, that's something that America pretty much created. And I think that's something that needs to be centerpiece. We need to get rid of the screens for little kids. What they're doing at every level is dumbing us down. The biggest thing they're doing to the Marxists, to the people that get brainwashed, is you're not allowed to notice patterns. What does a good journalist do? Notice patterns. You start noticing patterns based on nationality, this, that, or the other, and now you're a racist. What's the worst thing you can be in the woke world? A racist. After someone's been deemed a racist, valid or not, they are no longer a human being. They can be killed, they can be tortured, they can be made fun of, bullied, and it's absolutely disgusting. So, yeah, there's a lot going on, but I think at the same time that we're combating it, we also need to think long term into the future. If we're just reactionary, we're going to be playing this game forever. We're going to be plugging holes in the dam all day long. We don't change the university system and really go to our kids and say, hey, what's going on? What's wrong? I'm sorry that society has failed you, because society has failed them. Everything that they've been taught is a lie. They were lied to by everybody just to make their day easier. Take this pill. I was a kid in the 90s, the whole Ritalin epidemic, all that. I went through that. And I saw how basically, are no longer, your personality, you as an individual doesn't matter anymore. You're just another number in a book for a school. Again, that's Marxism. That's more of a leftist thought of groups of people versus the individual. So if we really get back, if you read the Constitution, really get back to what the founding fathers were talking about your individual rights, that you are an individual. The government should be there to augment your life, not to, disturb or disrupt and overregulate. Um, I think people have been coddled for so long. And like you were saying earlier, a lot of Americans have never had to deal with serious consequence. You do this and that happens. I mean, they just really haven't they haven't lived in a place where if you don't go and get fresh water today, you're going to have no water to drink. Or if you don't go out and hunt a buffalo, there's going to be no food for anybody. And to hunt a buffalo, you have to put your life on the line. That's not going to HEB and picking up ground beef. So I think people have lost a lot of their primal drives, which connects you to nature. That we're not all the most important thing in the world. That there is a life cycle. We live and we die, and it goes on, so on and so forth. And that kind of brings in that whole what do they call it? Transhumanism. The elitists want to live forever. They want to upload their consciousness to a hard drive and live forever. That sounds pretty bleak and disgusting to me, to be that self-centered. But that is what they're trying to cultivate. They're trying to tell everybody that's the way to be. Be a robot on a hard drive somewhere forever, I guess controlling. What are you doing? Controlling people, telling people what to do? I mean, whole Marxism's turned everything on its head, so we need to turn it back right again. But that's the big thing. The globalists may have knocked the world off of balance, but it doesn't mean they're the one that's going to put it back right again. We can do it.
Yeah. Amen to all of that. It's interesting, folks. I know that a lot of you are listening to this and you're saying, man, is this a political show or is this a crime show? And the whole reason that we're having this discussion here is, just like there's a lot of people that commit crimes, especially in the big cities and things like that, because they don't have opportunities. They don't have, or they're not willing to actually go out and take advantage of opportunities that might be there. But it all boils down to personal responsibility. So you are responsible. Nobody cares. Nobody gives a crap about your life more than you do. And if you're not willing to actually go out and work and take responsibility for yourself and actually be productive, you have to personally be productive. You have to go hit the gym. If you want to be in good shape, you have to hit the gym. You have to eat right. Nobody can do it for you. And ultimately, it's the same mentality that we all have to have. We all have to start looking in the mirror and saying, okay, am I being productive? Yes. Or I mean, nobody's being as productive as they could be. But that's where it starts. Say, am I taking responsibility for myself? And if you're not, then you have to do that. And frankly, I think society we all have to look at each other and say, okay, as a collective, the first thing we have to do is look in the mirror and say, I need to do my share. I need to take responsibility for myself and take responsibility for my own family. And then I can contribute to society. And, otherwise everything falls apart. And none of us want that, because then we're all just like, it's every man for himself. And in fact, I heard an interview of a guy that was a former CIA officer, and he actually talked about, if society falls apart, most of the guys that know really what they're doing, they only have like a couple of days worth of supplies on hand, because from then they become like nomads and they start going from place to place and just collecting resources as they need them. I'm like, imagine 350 million of us doing that. I mean, that is chaos in the highest form, and none of us want that. And so the only way to solve this is for people to actually start taking responsibility for themselves, and most importantly, demanding that other people take responsibilities for themselves as well in everything that they do. Say, look, if you have a worthless degree from the university, that's on you. And most importantly, from that point forward, you need to figure out what you're going to do, because basically you need to start over. Your education is worthless. You need to start re-educating yourself and actually learning how life really works. And otherwise, that's when when they start taking shortcuts, that's literally when they start moving into crime, because then they start looking at other people and saying, well, Taylor has more than what Jared does. Therefore, Jared is justified in taking stuff from Taylor. And sorry, that's crime. And that's the one thing that this show is all about, is identifying that and then identifying the problem and saying, hey, this is how we solve this. And for the people that just can't get it into their heads that taking responsibility for themselves is critically important, then that's when you say, well, we're going to put you in jail then. So that's just how our system works. You have to be responsible for yourself. And if you can't, then we just can't allow you to run free. So that's the basics of it. And I don't know. Taylor, am I just kind of on a soapbox? Does this make sense?
No, it makes sense. Something I wanted to bring up from earlier too is what you're talking about. Referring to like people not really getting involved and not producing anything, just thoughts and words and everything. When, the Haitians were eating cats and dogs in the Midwest, what happened? People made memes and laughed about it. Ha ha, our country's being invaded and our beloved pets are being eaten by some foreign guy who doesn't speak English. Ha ha ha, this is funny. No, it's not funny. This is the bread and circus that the Romans were talking about. That basically we have taken to entertainment and, these little political battles. That's the sandbox the globalists are allowing you to play in. They're allowing, they allow BLM to riot. They allow, people to get, there's discourse. There's, like a bunch of, I think Proud Boys and Antifa got into it in Portland years back. They allow that. They, you know what I mean? That's the sandbox you're allowed in. You got to think outside the box, and you got to do things that actually make a difference. I started a group called Citizens Against Sexualization of Children to combat South Texas Equality Project, and Lupe's also involved with them, doing kids drag shows down in the Rio Grande Valley. And they're backed by ACLU, all the usual suspects. So you have to get involved somehow. And if you don't know politics, you don't know that kind of stuff, support somebody who does. And more than anything, make your own decision. Live and die by your own accord. Even if it's a stupid decision, you made it, not somebody else. So I think people need to start looking at the gilded cage around them. That's basically, there is the matrix. The matrix is right in front of us. It's the phone. It's the, the white picket fence and 2-car garage and all that stuff. If you want those things, those materialistic things, you're going to have to buy into the matrix and sell your soul and take the jab and everything else. Or you can live outside the matrix. And it might be scary. It might be kind of different, but people are already setting up systems like that. I know people in different towns that are trying to get, like a precious metal backed currency for their local farmers market. I was in North Carolina recently, and actually a few months ago with the floods and everything. And those are some of the most resilient, off the grid people that have, they know old school medicine. They can take herbs from the mountain and heal you. And that's why, that's why FEMA hasn't really helped them as much. And I think that's why they're trying to drive those people out of the mountain. You will never drive the Appalachian people out. They are the most resilient people ever. If you want to study how to get a society back on track or how to create your own, go to the mountains of, Western North Carolina, Eastern Tennessee, and you will see the most remarkable thing ever. Just awesome communities working together and such knowledgeable people. And these people still read books too. So I think we need to kind of get back to the old ways of family, reading, classic education. And I don't hope I'm not on a soapbox now either. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, no, that's absolutely spot on. I think one last thing that absolutely has to happen is, and it kind of goes all the way back to that phrase of when Benjamin Franklin came out of the room and the lady asked him, what kind of a government are we going to have? And he says, a republic if we can keep it. And I think part of that message was our society works because, not just because of the structure of it, but also because there's a certain moral clarity that has to exist in order for our society to actually function. And I think we're seeing that. For example, morals is what actually drives our justice system, for example, to be equal and fair across the board. And I think a lot of that you saw in the last couple of years, like the lawfare that was brought against President Trump, especially that Judge Merchan. That guy has to be one of the most corrupt people that have ever existed on a bench, because he would allow things that should have never happened. And I think all these people that are screaming and yelling, saying, "Oh yeah, President Trump's a convicted felon," well, there is zero doubt in my mind that everything about that conviction is going to be overturned. Once somebody that's actually moral, a moral court, a court that actually has fairness in their minds, and a lady justice that's still blindfolded, they're going to throw that out. And so being a convicted felon is just a trope that everybody's going to have to discard here pretty quick. But the key is being a moral society is equally important as having a system like a constitutional republic like what we have. And without it, again, the entire thing falls apart. And unfortunately, once it starts falling apart, then the amount of crime that we are going to see, the amount of inhumane acts against other people, the amount of charity is going to just plummet, because it's the more crime that's out there, the more people are forced to look inward and say, it's every man for himself. It's every family for himself. It's my responsibility as a dad and as a husband to protect my family. And if I have to provide for my family and I can't look outward and help my neighbors, then again, even the neighborhood falls apart. And then that just reverberates out and becomes a larger and larger scale until everything falls apart. And that's, I know people, hear these kind of things and they say, this is just a conspiracy. You're blowing things way out of proportion. But, we've seen the deterioration over the last few years, especially. We've seen this deterioration that I think the foundation, you can't see it on the surface as much as what's happening underneath. The foundation is just rotting. It's falling apart. And we've got to get serious, and we've got to get under there and save that foundation. And a big part of that foundation is morals, and a big part of that foundation is personal responsibility.
Absolutely. And people think you can just sit back and be an American. Being an American is a full-time job. We have to, constantly fight for our rights, and more than even just fight for rights, just stand up for what you already have. Don't be that mousy person that says nothing. Stand for something. Say something, or else we've got, you've got everything to lose if you don't.
Yeah, 100% right. So, hey, Taylor, how can people find you and follow you? And, what platforms are you active on? Why don't you talk about that a little bit?
So RGV Truth, as in Rio Grande Valley Truth, all one word. RGV Truth 1 on X, and just RGV Truth on all other platforms, which would be Facebook, Rumble, and Instagram. Mostly I update on Rumble, Facebook, and X.
Awesome. RGV Truth. And I'll put some of those links in the show notes for sure. But again, I found you on X, and I thought some of your posts on there were just absolutely spot on. And I was like, man, this is I got to have this guy on the show to talk about this stuff, because again, it's a crime show. We're not trying to be political. We're not trying to focus on this doomsday type of scenarios, but at the same time, the amount of potentially the amount of damage and the amount of crime that we could see from what's the repercussions of what's happened over the last 4 years. And then starting Monday, by the time you're listening to this, folks, things have changed. The moment, 12:01 on the January 20th, things are going to change. And that's when President Trump will be sworn in. And from that moment forward, everything is starting to change. And we've already started seeing that. We've already started seeing people changing their attitude. Hamas all of a sudden wants peace, and, all sorts of wild stuff that's going to happen around the world, but also within the United States, things are going to change. And there's some people that don't want to change, and they are willing to go to any length to make sure that it doesn't change, regardless of what we want as the people. And so if you are listening to this, then resolve to be part of the change, resolve to be part of getting us back to the United States that we all know and love and we're proud of. And part of that is going to have to be, number one, you got to take responsibility for yourself and your family. And number two, reach out and make sure that other people are held to the same standard that you are. So, and part of that a big thing is getting educated. And that's where people like Taylor come in mind. So again, everybody go and follow Taylor and check out everything that he's doing on all these social media. Again, RGV Truth. So Taylor, I can't tell you how much I appreciate the discussion. It's been kind of depressing, man. I was hoping you had some better stories about being down there at the Rio Grande, but I'm just kidding. But I appreciate everything you do, because as hard as it is to hear, it's all stuff that we need to hear.
Yes, sir. And maybe I can come back on and we can get into the nitty gritty of the trafficking rings down here. But yeah, it was excellent podcast, brother. Really appreciate you having me on.
Thanks for joining us. Your attention today brings us one step closer to exposing and eliminating the evil that brings crime to our communities. Hit subscribe and share this episode. Together, we will bring justice to every victim.